did talk a little bit about, well, our presentation was about elevating performance marketing and leadership beyond metrics. And that's what we wanted to really put out there, that leadership is not just metrics, even though the metrics are very, very important. And we did stress that a little bit, but we wanted to share that there's more than just the metrics. So, of course, we had to start out by showing some pictures of ourselves and our families, because we wanted to make that connection with our audience. And so these are Sean's family members. Sean, would you like to share this part?
Sure. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that there was a connection. You just never know the background of everybody that you're working with and that people who report up to you. So understanding that they might be a grandfather like myself, they might be married for 30 years, they might be somebody who loves sports or loves the plays, things of that nature. So understanding how you can make a better connection with your team so that when the metrics does come into play, it's much easier for you to sit back and have great expectations. We never know what's going on in people's lives and what their background is. And sometimes, even though they might not look like you, they might have the same exact interests as you have. But you would not know that unless you go a little bit deeper. We're not saying be deep, that being not saying that you have to analyze their lives. However, once you kind of make a better and a different connection with them, maybe it's plays or maybe it's family, then from that point on, it's amazing how we become much more of one as a people and not being based on the whole, well, you're tall, I'm short, who cares? And you kind of go from there. So that involves a little bit more of the overall inclusion. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a personal connection between us and the audience.
Yep. And it's good because then when things happen, like if you can see here, this picture down in the corner with Sean and Cher, they're actually at the tennis opens in Miami. And like if you didn't know that Sean was interested in tennis and you were actually in Miami at the tennis open and you had no idea that he was also there. So now this is a good thing because you can say, oh, okay, good. We have something else in common, which is great. And so then, of course, with me, it's mostly family. And so I've got all my kids on here in the top middle picture. And then, of course, my grandbabies are all on here as well. And my parents, I put them on there too. And then, of course, picture of myself and my husband, just like Sean was saying, so that we can make that connection so people can see that we are actually real people and that we have real stuff going on too in our lives. Okay, so the very first thing that we shared was how well, we shared this painting, the painting that you see on the slide. And what we really wanted to express with this was that when it comes to certain things in leadership, sometimes there are things that we won't know unless we explain it. So we threw out there, like, what do people see with this particular picture? Like, what do you think this picture is about? So does anybody want to take a guess as to what this picture is about?
Come on now.
Anybody? Anybody want to guess what this is? You can put it in the chat if you want to.
Just a lot of anarchy happening.
A lot of anarchy happening right now, yes. Right. Um, so okay, so this picture was painted by an artist. Her name is 𝗂𝗲𝗁 𝗀𝗀𝗃, and it was in the Baroque era. And the description of it is, this violent painting is called Judith beheading Holofernes, right? So she's got somebody helping her, well, in the painting, two women are holding this man down, and one of them has a sword and she's beheading this guy. So it might appear to viewers as simply a dramatic biblical scene. However, art historians now understand it as the artist processing her own trauma after being raped by her tutor and enduring a humiliating public trial. So she transformed herself from a victim to an empowered avenger through her art. So now when you first see it, you're like, this is really sort of violent, and this looks like they're murdering somebody. But on the flip side, you recognize in the description that in actuality, she is trying to overcome her feeling of being a victim by painting these types of what people, called very dramatic and very traumatic scenes. So like works of art, every day we leave our handprints everywhere we are. And so we asked people, about how they wanted to be bronzed, right? So there's this thing that happens as you're moving through your life, these different things that people remember about you, and especially being a leader in the performance marketing space or being in the performance marketing space, what are the handprints that you'd like to leave? So when things are all said and done, what do you want people to be able to say about you? So that's a question we want to ask to everybody here. Hey,
And
John.
so one of the things, and I think I like to do this when I was on stage, I was actually, the way that I presented it was the fact of I'm sitting back and I'm standing like this. And let's say I'm say that I'm John. You figure out your pose.
Yeah.
Again, if I'm Chloe, let's say if I want to have my hands here and I am bronzed as a statue.
Yes.
Below that statue normally is going to have your name. What would it say behind your leadership? What is your leadership, style? What would people remember you as? We had some people in the audience that talked about the fact of remember being kind, being funny, being empowering. The list went on and on. So if we can, please feel free to take yourself off mute and tell us what is maybe the one or two words of how you would want to be bronzed above your statue, below your statue. What would be that one characteristic? Anybody?
I'm happy to share it, Shaquanda. I see myself bronze like with my right fist like to the sky, just
Mhm.
like always being someone who's standing up, right, for when there's injustice or when people in our workplaces don't feel like they're seen, valued, or heard, and me being on the front lines of like really not advocating for people, but partnering with them and advocating for yourself. So that's where your employee resource groups come, right, to talk about those personal lived experiences that aren't always accepted in the workplace, questioning why don't people have opportunities, right? Who aren't well represented in this space. So that's the first thing that came to mind for me.
I love it. And I think I probably could have seen that. Like without you even saying it, I think I would have
Mhm.
seen you with your stuff. Like, yes, yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you.
So you know what? I'm gonna put the spotlight. Sarah, you still with us? I would love to know because again, you are a leader amongst so many women
Yes.
out there. I would love to know below your statue, what would be that one characteristic? And then after that, I'm gonna ask Eric to give us his one word as well.
I would say bold would be a good one. I'm placing a lot of kids in internships right now. The mentorship program through Link Unite is booming, almost so much where I don't have any extra time. Um, but I've been having a lot of conversations with college students, and I'm like, I'm trying to tell them that if you don't get an internship or if you don't get placement or things like that, you need to learn how to just take that constructive criticism and kind of move on. So I'm having a lot of conversations like that. And I feel like I'm raising all these, I'm like add it to my list of raising children, like my own teenagers, but I'm just trying to teach them how to take that because this generation, it's very, very different than ours. As far as the internships and these mentorship programs are going. I had one kid he's not gotten one through three separate interviews, and he's just kind of like wants to throw his hands up. So
Mhm.
I'm just trying to teach them how to be bold and yeah, I didn't have anything
Mhm.
really other than
No,
that.
that's perfect.
No, that's
No,
awesome. I
that
love it.
that is exactly that is perfect. Eric, how about yourself?
Well, first, I want to thank Sarah for giving me some time to think about something. Um,
You're welcome.
but I'm going to say curiosity. To me, when I think about, what do I want from my teams? What do I want them focused on? It's really about, asking questions and being open to learning new things and finding new answers. And so to me, the value and really what's interesting and exciting about life is learning, it's curiosity and that openness.
Love it. And so
Love it.
let's see if we can get two more people. John,
Yeah,
call.
yeah. I'd love to chime in. And I kind of echo where a bit of where Eric just came off of, and Jaquanda and came off with as well. Where I think for me it'd be standing straight, kind of looking towards the North Star, one hand with a scroll in one hand and a ton of books under the other arm. In a sense, to give that sense of being prepared for anything and having that plan. Just kind of the reason why I'm holding the scroll in a roll is so that it gives that person that sense of having the plan, but it could be anything, right? It's having that direction, and always learn, aspire to learn, and always look to your North Star, create your North Star. That's kind of what it is, what I would do.
Awesome. I like that.
How about you, call? Any question, any particular words that you would want to have underneath your bronzing statue?
I have to think. First of all, I'm kind of cheating. I just got back from 𝗬𝗂CON. I'm trying to catch up on work at the same time. But
I got you.
I saw one of the young men that was involved with the summit at 𝗬𝗂CON, and he let me know that the meeting was today. So I did want to chime in, but just as far as what I've heard so far in regard to what type of statue I think it would be, first of all, I think mine would be with one arm stretched out with the open hand. And as a leader, I've always thought that engagement was very, very important.
Gotcha.
One of the things I've
Understood.
seen is that so often people maybe have a fear of reaching out to someone or getting to know someone, and that as a leader, if I could be that engaging person with my hand stretched out, with open hand, to say, hey, let's have a conversation about whatever. And as you were saying earlier, you never know the things we have in common if you don't have those conversations. And so many times I found that there's many things, much more that we have in common than what may be different. So that would be it.
I love it.
Agreed.
I love
Great
that. I
point.
love that hand stretched out idea. That's beautiful. And I want to throw in that when we got done with the presentation, that someone found me the next day, actually. Somebody came and found me and said, I've been looking for you. And this particular slide, they said that just it was the first content slide. And they said, it made a difference for them because their team had just lost someone very recently. They lost someone. And so there's been a lot of talk about that person and the legacy that they've left behind. So immediately Sean and I were able to see how impactful this particular slide was on certain people who were in the room. So I think it's important for us to think about it, for us to think about how we want to show up to the world and how we want the world to see us when we are no longer in that space where we are fully seen. So, so great. Thank you. And thank you for your input. Thank you for adding your voice to this. That's great. Of course, if it had anything to do with me, then it had to do something with critical thinking. We had to throw the slide in. So I'm not going to go through this because most people here have already seen the presentation. Most people have. If you have not, I'm happy to share with you at some point. But I had to throw in the framework because whenever we do anything, we do it for a purpose. And as we utilize our critical thinking skills, as we learn those skills, it's important for me, it's important for all of us to be able to have some of these things in mind as we were going through the presentation. So what's the purpose of us talking about it? What are some of the questions that we have? What are the concepts that we're dealing with when it comes to leadership beyond metrics? What are the concepts that we're talking about? And what assumptions do we make when it comes to some of these things that we're dealing with, of course, dealing with point of view and all of that. And Sean took 2 of these, and I want him to still do that. So Sean, can you talk about the assumptions and information?
So of course, yes, the ones that I took was assumptions, because so often what we do is we make assumptions from across the room. Before sometimes somebody even opens their mouth, we automatically assume XYZ. That is, again, that might not be warranted and is based off of our own baggage, our own history, our own culture of what we've been taught. But if we can move aside and make it where those assumptions are no longer present, or we at least are aware of the assumptions that we made, and allow the book to remain open. Allow that individual to kind of truly fill in the gaps with what is their truth, what is their reality. And it goes a very long way. So as a leader, and again, a leader, and these are these are the leadership beyond just the regular metrics. We understand we're all looking to make $1. We're looking to, again, make sure we hit certain goals, things of that nature, so that we can achieve that top line of what we want. However, if we make certain assumptions, we might limit the amount of people that we actually hire onto our team, because we assume that this person is going to do this or this person is not going to do that. Allow those assumptions to be put to the side, and don't let it limit you as the leader that you can and should be. And then I talked about information. So often we live in sometimes a culture of Instagram, Facebook, where people will sit back and will feed you all kind of false information, false data. They will stop in front of a car, take a picture of themselves. You think that they own this $2 billion car. One thing to another, just all about presentation, again, across the board. Why not find the facts, the figures that are true? Sit back and make sure that you do, collect some data about the individual or whatever the case is. It can even be from the fact of how you, again, when you start off your team meeting, the fact of a lot of times what I like to do is I like to ask teammates, again, how their weekend was. Whatever it might be, get something that is a little bit more engaging, because if somebody's going through a lot, you just never know. So gather as much facts and information as you can so that you can be the best leader. And once you know you put them in a place of comfort, most likely it's going to affect the metrics. So remain open. Then after I did my two, Ndala went and she took over, I think one or two herself.
Yep. So I talked a little bit about two that are important to me, which is purpose and point of view. I was talking with a VP of a particular company not long ago, and she was telling me that there was some challenges that she was having with another VP within the company. And so there was a meeting that was coming up, and she was having all these challenges. And as she was talking to me, I was hearing that there was just some personality differences that were going on. They were coming at things from two different perspectives. And so I said to her, I asked her, I said, well, first of all, she was anticipating that the meeting wasn't going to go well, just based on her thoughts about what was happening with the two of them. And I said, well, what's the purpose of your meeting? And she told me what it was. And I said, okay, then I think it's important that you really focus on that, and don't focus on what's happening as far as body language or nonverbal communication or whatever it is that's going on. Just focus on your purpose and what it is you want to take away from the meeting. And she thought about it for a second, and she said, okay. And then we dealt with a couple of other things in regards to point of view and perspective. And then she went to her meeting, and shortly after the meeting, she contacted me. She was like, that was amazing. She's like, I didn't experience any of the stuff that I had experienced before, because I was really focusing on what it was why this meeting was important and what the takeaway needed to be, or what I was wanting to take away to be. And so I think that when it comes to purpose, it helps us to clarify and it helps us to stay on target. So I dealt with that one. And then, of course, I always deal with point of view, because if we're talking to leadership beyond metrics, and one of the things that we're focusing on is that human to human interaction, which is what we're focusing on, human to human experience, then one of the main things that we have to always recognize is that we all have a different point of view, right? So we could come from the same place, we could be the same color, we could be, work in the same type of position. But the truth is that everyone has their own unique and very valuable, precious perspective. And so point of view, if we can keep that in our minds, then I think that that's just something that's going to assist us as in our leadership roles as well.
And Ndala, one of the things that I loved about this portion when you talked about it in the presentation is that you sat back and said the point of view of the room that we had from the front of the on stage was one view, but then the individual who was at the back of the actual room, and the room is fairly large. Let's say it was 100 feet by maybe 50 feet. That person's point of view of the room was completely different from yours. So in the same exact room, could look completely different, could look completely the same as far as the individual, but the actual point of view of the angle that they see life was completely different. So as leaders, making sure that we recognize that, I think is extremely important.
Yeah.
Jaquanda, I see your hand is up.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought this, but I feel like I needed to say it out loud. The whole like statue bronzing, I love that so much, and thank y'all for doing that, because I think right now, kind of with people really feeling the weight of what's happening societally, right? And I'm seeing a lot just in my work, right, with different clients, seeing a lot of incivility happening in the workplace, and it's happening, with leaders, right? And this is not new, right? Like there are leaders who should not be people leaders. Like they probably can do really well at their work, but not in how they engage with people, are curious about people, etc. And I think really helping people see themselves and reminding people that you are leaving a legacy, whether you like it or not, number one. And number two is like, what do you want that legacy to look like? Like, do you want to be remembered as a leader who is kind, who is bold, who stands up for people? Or do you want your legacy to be the leader who was not curious about people, not engaging with people, not creating the space to know them? So I just wanted to like voice that, because I think like, even though that was an activity, I'm like, that is so necessary right now for people to see themselves and remember, like, you are leaving a legacy. So I just wanted to thank y'all for sharing that. I was trying to raise my hand earlier, but y'all had like already started moving on.
I love
No,
that.
I love it. No,
Perspective.
thank you
Yeah,
for
that's
that.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was great input.
yeah, I
I
love it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I do like point of view and purpose. It's just it plays into what you just said, Jaquanda, where you're leaving your legacy, and point of view and purpose are the two things that that I think are important as a leader. You need to have some type of goal and objectives, right? That's kind of what you're working towards, and you have to then curate personalities and the people and the resources to get there, right? So point of view is always important because it gives you a frame to kind of reference how we think through, or the process of thinking through, where you can engage your staff, you can engage your resources in a way that says, okay, the world's full of similes, right? Things sound the same, can be the same, but mean different things for different people. And so you can talk through those differences and orientate, kind of create an orientation for how we process to make sure that we all are hitting our goals and objectives. And so that was the thing that I walked away from with the conference. I was in the back, and I was like, man, I really got to dig deeper into this slide, because those are the elements, right? It's like the what is it called? That table of elements in science, where
Yeah. The periodic
the
table.
answers
Yeah.
are there, the periodic table. This is kind of like the periodic table for critical thinking, in which you can kind of, reference those key ingredients to create
That's it.
something, right?
Yes.
I just love this slide. I do.
Yes, you got it. That's it. These are the key ingredients right here, those elements of thought. And thank you, Sean, for bringing up that analogy that we used about the room, because, the one point that I really wanted to make was not so much of the different perspectives, because we all have them, but the fact is that if they really wanted to see what my perspective, all they had to do was come and step up on the stage. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can change your perspective, or you can broaden your perspective just based on where you're standing, and based on, if I think I said something about if I saw something on the back wall, you all wouldn't see it unless I said, hey, look at what's on the back wall. And then it's just as easy as turning around and looking at the wall. Right. So sometimes we can help ourselves in that way as well. Okay. So, and Jaquanda, I know you're going to love this one too. So we talked about fostering fearless teams, and we talked about psychological safety, and we had these 3 types of safety that we can think about as leaders when it comes to the meetings that we're in with our team members, when it comes to training our managers and our directors, the people that are under, the people who may be also managing teams, and helping them to broaden their perspective about the kind of safety that they need to make sure that they are providing. So then we ask these questions like, what is inclusion safety? What do you think inclusion safety is? What do you think contributor safety is? What do you think challenger safety is? Sean, what do you have to say about all of this?
I love this part, because ultimately this starts coming to, how do you implement what we're talking about? It's one thing to let people know what's present. It's one thing to let people understand that, hey, you should be doing this, but sometimes identifying what they should be doing or what they could be doing to provide the atmosphere so that their team can give them feedback, So inclusion, making sure that everybody feels included. What I do is that sometimes some of the most private, some of the most quietest people on my team, what I'll do is I'll sit back and I'll ask them about how their weekend was or something to that nature that they can sit back and openly talk about. And then what I like to do is I like to reference that when everybody in the rest in the meeting shows up. Because then when you sit back and say, hey, you know what? I was speaking to John earlier today and he mentioned this. Now, people tend to sit back and say, whoa, John is normally a really quiet guy. And now John is being mentioned by our boss, in essence, our leader. And then that brings John, that kind of elevates John. So right now, he automatically will feel, in essence, more included. And then hopefully based off of that, making it where he becomes more of a contributor because now he knows that he has a voice. It's
Yep.
sometimes it's as simple as that. So maybe as a leader, what you do is you kind of go through and say, you know what, in this meeting of 10, 15, 20 people, who's normally the most quiet? And then what you do is you sit back and you maybe highlight a conversation that you had with them so that they know that others know that you recognize them. And once they feel recognized, then they're going to sit back and say, well, I'm recognized by our leader. Then guess what? Then you sure as heck should recognize me, per se. It's amazing what you do to build up people's confidence, again, across the board. So there's more inclusion. And then, of course, the second one was Fargo's being a contributor. Once people feel like they have a voice, then guess what? They're ready to open it. They're ready to open up their mouth and say, guess what? Well, now that you guys see me, maybe I will give you in action I'll contribute a little bit more. And what that's going to do is, again, being a leader and addressing things beyond the metrics, again, that's going to lead to greater growth, greater finances, greater numbers, greater top line benefits, again, across the board, because now you have people who are willing to contribute who might have this, might have the secret sauce. And then we talked about, in the last part, we talked about the fact of there's a gentleman by the name of Lewis Howard, who actually was a major contributor. Here was a black man in the 1800s that talked with and met with, and he was actually one of the head researchers with, again, with
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison, excuse me. I can't remember the main guy's name. Thomas Edison, of course, who created lights. We have lights because of Thomas Edison. Well, guess what? Thomas Edison made sure that a member of his team, which was this African-American man back in the mid 1800s, heavily contributed to the light bulb. And honestly, maybe if without, and one could say, if it was not for his team, we would not know who the heck Thomas Edison was. So it talked about the leadership, and we know what was happening in the mid 1800s to especially people of color. This here is a big to do. So right now, but you had somebody who felt safe contributing to, again, those particular efforts. And then the last one, Ndala.
So challenger safety has to do with feeling safe, challenging an idea, right? And think about how many amazing things have come out of these types of situations. Somebody upsets the apple cart and it's like, then you create this entire new amazing process, right? Because you have challenged, there's been a challenge to something that was put out. And if people don't feel comfortable, if you have certain people who are dominant in meetings and they're making suggestions, and then someone on the side is like, you know what, I was at a different company, we tried that same thing that exact same way and it didn't work. But if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel safe saying something to challenge what this other person has said, then that could really create a challenge. It could create a problem. So then you've got this idea rolling out, and then when it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen correctly, or something goes wrong, and that person could have said something, but because they didn't feel safe challenging the idea, you can see where that can go. So challenger safety is also important. If there's an idea that needs to be challenged, then, and even as a leader, one of the things you could do is, hey, I've got this idea, challenge me. Beat this up. I remember Sean used to say this too. It was like, tell me where this could be wrong. I want you to mark this up and tell me how wrong this could be so that we can fix it and make it perfect. Because like if we can, and so sometimes we think we're creating psychological safety, but we might not be really. And so we need to be able to recognize these as leaders, to be able to amplify people's voices, make them feel included, make them feel safe, make them feel that they can contribute, and also that they have the space to challenge ideas if they feel like a challenge is necessary.
And
So
and the last point of this is the fact that I'm thinking about it. A lot of us have companies that we sit back and we post on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Sometimes it's actually important that what if before those creatives went up, we sent those creatives to mention members of our team, where members of our team could sit back and say, okay, well, oh, I like this. I like this. Ooh, hold on. Don't put, I would suggest not posting this one because there's people within my culture who would consider that to be offensive because of X. And you might not know it. Be like, oh, I had no idea. That goes a long way behind the fact of saving you a huge headache from posting something that could be seen by the world that in essence is considered to be offensive to a portion of the world where all you had to do is make one little tweak and now everybody is feeling good and the metrics of your bottom line increase. You make that much more money. You're that much more inclusive because you sat back and took a moment as a leader to do something that created psychological, again, safety within all the members of your team. One thing leads to another. And I think that was important that we wanted to sit back and so just thinking, making sure that we think about that safety each and every day. Next one.
So they were, we didn't want to put that out there without giving just a few little ideas as to what you could potentially do. And so we talked about just being courageous enough to really address this because it is a thing. Like you can push it under the rug if you want to, but creating psychological safety in companies is important and being intentional and consistent about what it is that you're doing. So yeah.
Exactly. And I think the one that I focused on here was just the fact of making sure that we are extremely intentional. This is not going to happen just because you saw a presentation on it. You've got to wake up each and every morning and say, you know what? What do I want to accomplish today? What kind of leader do I want to be? And if you've made a decision that you want to be a leader who listens, who's the voice, who is kind, then you've got to, you got to do so. We had one person that I mentioned that said that they want to be known as being funny. So that means providing an atmosphere that was a little bit less, there was no tension per se. And so right now, to me, I sat back and said to that person, well, then if you want to be perceived as funny, you need to really be funny. So ultimately, you know what? Practice your jokes. Maybe tell a joke here and there each and every day. Be intentional about what you want to accomplish each and every day.
Yeah.
And that will, in essence, eventually, it will become where you don't even have to think about it often. But at least maybe for the first 90 days, be intentional about what you want to, how you want to be perceived and what you're doing
Yep.
as a leader.
Yep. And one of the things you said, Sean, was like you specifically just said, think about in the morning, what do I want? Okay, immediately that means you're assessing yourself. And so that was the last point, is that one of the greatest things that we can actually do for our teams is to understand who we ourselves are, which is where the critical thinking comes in, is understanding our own thinking, why we're thinking the way that we're thinking, and assessing ourselves before we step out the door. I was just listening to something earlier that was something in another chat that I'm a part of. And one of the young ladies was talking about, she had written an article, and the article was about how to interact better. She's a coach and she coaches married women. And she said one of the things about what she does is she has them say, what can I do differently? And the whole article was about how to assess yourself in your relationship. And she had all these examples of how these couples interaction had changed, not because you got the other person to change, but because you assessed yourself. So I think that as leaders, that is one of those paramount pieces about just, it's not about making sure everybody else is, it's about making sure before you even show up, making sure you know who you are and how you are going to interact and being very intentional about it. So yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yes,
if I could jump in
Charles,
just a
please.
moment, I've got to get off here. I'm working, but one thing that just struck me as we were talking about this part of just being intentional about what we're doing is that as leaders, we need to also remember that we have vision that oftentimes the people we're leading, they don't have that vision or don't know how to envision things. And that by us being very intentional about bringing them out and getting them involved and so forth, they can end up also being leaders as well. I mean, there are always people on our teams that see themselves as wanting to be a leader, wanting to be a manager, or so forth. But my experience has been there's all these other people that never see themselves that way until we start seeing them that way, and they start believing in themselves, and then lo and behold, later on they rise up and just flourish.
I
So that
love
was
that.
cool.
Love that. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that input. That's amazing. Yep. Okay, so then we talked a little bit about this part because we wanted people to be cognizant of this. Sean, you want to explain what a polycrisis is?
So again, so this is funny because of course I sat back and I'm reading through it and I'm like, I know what a crisis is. I'm like, polycrisis, is that something special? And as we're going through it, of course, it's multiple crises happening in somebody's life at one given point. And so that thing right there is, again, it could be something that is extremely disruptive to their site, to their world. And so now, again, this is where Ndala kind of stepped into the place of explaining exactly what could be happening with team member 1, 3, 7, 11, and 22. They're going through multiple things. You're sitting back and saying, come on, guys, you know what? We got metrics, we got things that we need to do, we got deadlines, yada, yada, yada. And as a leader, you didn't step down for a moment saying, guess what? I've got here where Eric is always on point. But for whatever reason, Eric missed this deadline. And sometimes as leaders, we don't sit back and we're not empathetic to the fact of finding out that Eric's actually going through something. Call actually just his great grandson, it just was in an accident. I'm saying something because he doesn't have a great grandson yet. But again, one thing to another, so he's
One.
going through something. What happened?
Right, exactly. He said one.
Again,
just
so
just
things
had
of
my
that
person.
nature, we want to make sure that we're cognizant of those particular things. And so again, so I think that this was a great one here, but we had some fun with it. Let's go to the
Yeah,
next slide because I don't want to make sure that we don't run out of time.
Yep, absolutely.
So
So yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
So no, this was a cool one because I want everybody can see the image in the front of the gentleman with his hands crossed, but look at the image behind him, the ghost image behind him. And some of us play poker, and we would happen to be in Vegas, of course.
Yeah.
So, poker was very much at the top of people's minds. Well, guess what? He's sitting back in the front, he's smiling again across the board, but behind him, he's showing in essence, again, maybe he was non-verbally yelling. People who know you as a leader, they know if you are, how you're feeling, what your interaction is, and if you're really just sitting back looking at them and you're yelling with your face. So I love
Yeah,
this.
no.
Yeah.
And we have this phrase down here, fix your face, because we know somebody, we have a mutual friend who teaches a class called Fix Your Face and talks about how important it is with your body language, because sometimes your body language can be even louder than, than your actual words. And people can react to you a certain way, and you will never know, why is this person treating me this way? And it's all because of something you said with your face that you didn't actually say out of your mouth. So, we have to be careful as leaders to make sure that we are, that our body language doesn't send a message that we are not intending to send. So that was one of the reasons for that one. Sean, we
So
have
this one
6
here,
minutes.
yeah, so this one we talked about the weights that everybody might be carrying. So right now, just look at the different images. We've got a woman who has of Asian descent. We have a young African American man. You have a white woman who's blonde hair. You have an older gentleman with the glasses. You have an African American woman with some stylish hair. And guess what? Do we know what they're carrying? Do we know their background? You weren't able to see the pictures of their families or what they have interest in. But let's go to the next slide and then sit back and see. Guess what? Mary in the middle, she's dealing with a workplace discrimination while trying to train others. So she's trying to build up others, but at the same time dealing with the fact that there's some discrimination that Mary's going through.
Yeah.
Again, where's her mindset? What is she dealing with? We've got Joe, who in essence, let's say he's an accomplished gentleman, but he's been served divorce papers after being married for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever the case is, while he's trying to develop and expand a company. Or you have Eric, who's dealing with anxiety, again, while he's trying to present to clients and make that sell. People are going through things. Those are the weights that they carry, they bring into the office each and every day. These are things as leaders, we need to sit back and find ways that we are not just empathetic, but the fact is that we have an open heart for them. And so that we can sit back and help them be the best teammates that they can be for us. This
Yeah.
comes to a part where there are not just one adjective or one word that's going to be on your bronze statue. There's going to be other words behind that.
Yeah.
And what are those other words going to exist? So there might be the main one of boldness, of, of kindness, whatever the case is. But then there's going to be a story behind your leadership skills. So understanding that everybody who works for you is going through something. And if you're able to address it properly, it's going to affect the metrics at the end of the day.
Yep. Everybody has a backstory, and sometimes they're smiling, and you have no idea, because a lot of people are actually raised to not express their challenges and not let other people know. Like, what was the degree commercial that we grew up with? Like, never let them see you sweat, right? So a lot of people are going into work and they have a lot of things happening. So it's important that we are cognizant of the fact that there are weights that people carry, and that we should definitely be empathetic towards our team members. And we talked about this phrase of othering. And othering is simply treating people differently because of who they are or how we perceive them, right? And so we asked this question: how different would it be if we were all walking blind, and that there were things about other people that we couldn't see? Like, we couldn't see that this person is wearing a certain type of shoes that has a certain color on the bottom. We could not see this designer, whatever it is that this person has on, or we couldn't see that this person is wearing something that has a little hole on the side of it that we don't think is really supposed to be there. Like, we value or devalue people based on the things that we see or the things that we hold as valuable. So when it comes to being leaders, this is something right here that is a really serious point, which is walking away from people and making sure that we don't make them feel different in a negative way, that we don't make them feel othered, like they're not one of us, like they can't sit with us because they're not at the same level that we're at. I didn't mention this in the session, and we only have a couple minutes, but I'm a part of an orchestra right now where it is I'm in a healthcare organization, Advent Health, and there are people in the orchestra who are doctors, who are nurses, who are admins, who are techs, lab techs. And it's amazing that in your section, you could have a lab tech sitting right next to one of the top doctors in the system who plays the violin, right? So I love that because it allows us to all sort of be on the same playing field. And so I think this is really important as leadership. And we only have, like, I think one more slide. So we'll just go through it really quick. And that is, this is the end part, right? Go ahead, Sean.
Yep. And ultimately, we wanted to make sure that the presentation just alluded to the fact of being the best human beings that we can be. I mean, really, and as leaders, and what that's going to be. So that means assessing ourselves. Don't lie to yourself and then believe it. Hey, I'm a kind person. I know I yell a lot of times at people. I curse them out. I don't listen to them. I don't make the phone call. I don't reach out. Oh, but I'm a really good person. I'm a really good leader. No, you're not. Stop it. So in essence, our goal here is to make sure that we evaluate ourselves, assess ourselves, be the best human beings that we possibly can to other individuals, no matter what their background, no matter if we are how we see them. Well, I only like tall people. Well, I only like short people. I only like XYZ. Don't do that, because you're limiting yourself as a leader. You're also limiting your organization. Again, as great as you might be, you could be even greater.
Yep. And so that was pretty much it. And then, of course, based on what we did for the summit for BiPM, we asked people, to think about this idea of evolving. I think that when we hear information, or even if we hear it in a slightly different way, we've heard some of it before, then we can evolve in our thinking. And that's how we should be doing every day as human beings. So yeah, that was it. And it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I want to
fun.
say thank you to everybody who is looking at this, who was a part of the meeting today, for all of those who will be viewing it on YouTube as well. Again, our goal here is we want to make sure that that everybody understands how we are representing the organization, how we're representing you, and what our goal here is to bring to the table. So if you think that there's any organization that could benefit from anything that we shared today, we will personalize it and be there to present it for them as well. Our goal here is to build everybody up around us to be, again, the best leaders, the best human beings that we possibly can be, again, across the board. So I don't care who you are, what your background is. Guess what? I think I mentioned this in the session. I love everybody until you show me that I should not love you. So I'm going to start off that way with that in mind. So again, thank you so much. It is 1 o'clock, so we always want to be timely. Thank you so much for participating today. Have an incredible week, and let everybody know who you did not see today. Let them know that they missed something that was incredible, and they need to go to YouTube and go check it out. Thank you, guys.
you. Hey, Cruz.
Yeah.
I miss saying
Yeah,
hi to
Hello.
you.
thank you, everybody.
Yes, so happy to see
Appreciate
you
you.
guys.
Fine.
All
Talk to you.
righty.
Bye-bye. Great job.
Good job.
Bye-bye.